Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Wally Renee, and I'm a full-time faculty member at the Medical University of South Carolina College of Dental Medicine in sunny Charleston, South Carolina. My responsibilities at the university are essentially to course direct Fixed Prosthodontics 3 and direct CAD/CAM technologies both preclinically and clinically. So with that said, the main thing that we're going to talk about today is how to incorporate CAD/CAM technology and use it as a grading tool, an evaluation tool, self-assessment tool. And there's some new technologies on the market that I'm very excited to bring to your attention today and talk with you about. So it's this whole concept of three-dimensional grading, three-dimensional self-assessment. And it's a completely new thought. Only recently have we had the technology to be able to do this. So it's a new idea, and it's completely revolutionary. Once you see the amount of feedback that students can instantaneously get from this technology, I think you're going to be overwhelmed with excitement about how to bring this into your school and use this. But we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about 3D grading a lot today. But we're also going to talk about general things like preparation feedback, the old way of doing it. We're going to talk about how students learn. We're going to talk about Gen Ys, and we're going to talk a lot about literature. But grading the new way is the main focus of this topic. Why do we need a new way? If you look at the overwhelming consensus in the literature, it's that we need a new way to provide feedback to our students. Dr. John Medina, who has written a book called Brain Rules, looked at how students learn. How do students in our generation learn? He come to the conclusion and basically summed it all up and says visualization trumps all other senses when it comes to feedback. We haven't been doing visual feedback. We've been giving students a grade sheet that says, essentially 85, and it had some check marks. You've missed your lingual wall on your anterior all-ceramic preparation, -10. That's not visual feedback. That's not what they're craving. They want visual feedback. And with CAD/CAM technology, you can provide instantaneous visual feedback, and we'll get into that in a minute. This is an important question to ponder, and I want you to think about this just for a second. I was at a meeting a couple years back, and the former director of graduate medical education, Dr. Frank Medio, posed this question. He said, "What is the most important job of faculty? The single most important job?" And after much thought, the faculty raised their hand and unanimously said that the most important job is to teach students. And that seemed like a really good answer at the time, but he immediately disagreed. He said, the most important job is to provide accurate feedback, because if students receive accurate feedback, they could ultimately teach themselves. And that is a profound statement, and it is absolutely true. If we're going to encourage lifelong learning, and we're going to try to develop a better clinician, then accurate feedback and translation of that feedback to the student is the single most important job that we have as faculty. And do students agree with that? This article was published in the Journal of Dental Education, and basically it looked at a student's perspective of what made an effective instructor. And the conclusion was, from a student's point of view, those faculty members who were able to provide accurate evaluation were viewed as the most effective instructors. That's a profound comment from a student. They really crave accurate feedback. They don't want fluff grades. They don't want grade inflation. They want the truth, but they want it to be accurate. That's the key. So, before we talk about new technology in preparation evaluation, we're going to first focus on, for the next several slides, the current problems with the way we're evaluating now. And there's many current problems with the way that we're doing preparation feedback. Number one is that students are saying that we're not giving them enough feedback. They want more. Two, they feel like the feedback they are getting is subjective. And we'll talk a lot about subjectivity in evaluations a little later. The third issue is students understand who are the hard and easy graders, the so-called hawk and dove graders. How do we calibrate easy graders and hard graders? 4 is that students are not able to provide self-assessment. If we can't, as seasoned clinicians with a finely honed ability to evaluate work, provide consistent feedback among ourselves, how can we expect a student who's never done the procedure before in their lives to be able to look at that preparation and provide themselves with accurate feedback? We really can't. Another topic that's really important is the specific needs of Generation Y, the new generation, and their expectations as they're flooding into dental schools across the nation. This is a unique generation called the millennials, echo boomers. There's many different names for them, but there's some generalizations that we can make that would probably enable us to better provide feedback to this generation. And the last thing, we're going to talk a little bit about current trends in grade inflation. So let's take a trip back in time. This is how we used to grade at MUSC. Let's take a trip back. We used to fill out these preparation evaluation forms, grade sheets. And what we would do is we would look at the preparation, stare at it for 5 minutes, and then check off some check boxes, and then arbitrarily, seemingly unfairly provide a grade. We tried to say that, if you had a couple X's, we'd take off a certain amount of points, but the truth is, grader fatigue would set in after grading 70, and 5 minutes times 70, that's 6.5 hours. It's a lot of time in there, 75 students. You cannot remove personal biases no matter how hard you try. And so you would assign a grade, let's say a 75 like shown here, and the students would get that back. And they would say things to themselves like, Dr. Renee just doesn't like me. They would feel like it was a personal insult to them that you would evaluate them as 75. Remember, this is the generation of grade inflation. Many of them never got lower than an A coming into dental school. So here's the take home. Once the student perceives evaluation as being subjective evaluation, once they take this as truth, they're not going to practice. They're just not. They're going to do the work assigned, and they're going to turn it in and say, I get what I get. Based on whoever's going to evaluate my preparation, it's not accurate, so therefore, why should I spend all my time practicing when I know that the feedback's going to be inaccurate? That's a key kind of moment to go through and understand from the student's perspective where they're coming from. I remember when I lost faith in faculty evaluation as a student in dental school. I remember taking my preparation to one faculty member, and he said that it was over-tapered. And I didn't touch the preparation. I went to a different faculty member, and that different faculty member said, I didn't taper it enough. And it's at this point I realized as a student it doesn't matter. And that's a terrible feeling because you're there to become an excellent clinician. And if you can't rely on accurate feedback, you don't know where to go with your preparation. You don't know what to do. And so if you ask students, and we did a survey to our students, and the comment, a large part of my grade, a large part, depends on who happens to be grading my preparation at any given time. 78% of students agreed or strongly agreed. Essentially, they're saying my grade just depends on who happens to be grading, not on the actual work itself. That's a profound moment to just take to heart. I mean, they're frustrated with the way that we evaluated work. Another point is the whole concept of hawk versus dove graders, and you know who they are in your institution. You have those that give everybody 100, and you have those that give everybody a 70. How do you calibrate those, and do students know who those people are? And unanimously the answer is yes. They know who the hard and easy graders are. For example, if they're trying to get a preparation evaluated in the simulation laboratory, several faculty are in that lab, who are they going to flock to? The hard grader or the easy grader? They're probably going to flock to the easy grader, and you could tell that by the line out the door. and where the hard grader has nobody coming to them for feedback. It's human nature to want to be able to receive positive feedback. And so I would go to the easy grader. And when asked the question, do you know who the hard and easy graders are? 83% of our students said they know who the easy and hard graders are. So they know what's going on, and they know who to go to for feedback. Does the literature agree with the students' opinions? And the answer is yes. This was a fairly well done study published in the Journal of Dentistry that looked at amalgam preparations. And there was 5 examiners that were in this course. And they evaluated their work at 2 different points in time, 75 preparations. And look at this here. I'm going to highlight operator 5 here, examiner 5. He gave 0 B's or above on his second round of grading, whereas examiner 3 gave 13 B's or above. These are the same preparations they're evaluating. So what this is saying is essentially that a large part of the grade does indeed rely on who happens to be grading your preparation at any given time. That's not the way it should be. Gen Ys, we're going to talk just a minute about them because they're the most highly educated, most tech-savvy generation we've ever had coming in to our dental schools. They're born after 1983. Okay? You can remember why that they're Gen Y because they like to ask, why do I need to know this? They often ask, is this going to be on the test? This is a snapshot taken right before a lecture. Most of them are in the back of the room. They are on their laptops, phones, computers, updating Facebook. They're tweeting about your lecture as you're giving it. So if you want to know how you're doing, go look on Twitter. This is the generation of grade inflation. These kids have really never received anything but an A+. They're coming into dental school with a 4.0 GPA. They have never failed at anything. They always get A's. For them, it's just what they expect. You give them anything less than an A, they're going to be in your office the next morning. They're going to be saying that it's unfair. They perceive this notion that they deserve an A. This is the generation of everybody gets a trophy, okay? When they played Little League, when they played pickup ball, there was no loser. They didn't even keep score, but everybody got a trophy. So when they turn in their work, they're all expecting to get that trophy. And that's just not realistic. We're trying to train clinicians, excellent clinicians that are going to be working out in the community. We don't need to be able to give them false feedback. We need accurate feedback, accurate assessment. And so if you look at the millennials, this research basically looked at millennials in education, and they came to a couple conclusions. They say that millennials demand immediate feedback. They do not want to wait 3 weeks for you to turn in the grades for their practical. They want it instantaneously. They also prefer subjects which can be measured objectively. They don't like opinions. They want the truth. What about in dental school? This article published in JDE recently summarized Gen Ys and basically said they prefer interactivity and they place a very low value on what they perceive to be old ways of doing business, old ways of grading. Once they establish in their mind that that way is not modern or new or fair, they're going to completely tune out. It's important to remember we're dealing with a different student these days. What about, is what they're saying true? Are faculty arbitrary in their feedback? Are they empirical? Or are we able to provide accurate feedback? Let's look at first what students think and then also what the literature says. Inter-rater reliability. It's been researched pretty heavily. If I'm in a course and another faculty is in a course and we're both grading, can we agree on a grade? And the answer is no, we can't, even after intense calibration. And students know this. When asked the question, are there inconsistencies in preparation feedback between different faculty members, 95% of students said yes. That's huge. They know that we're inconsistent, and they don't like that. The literature says we're inconsistent. Neither cutting off the scores, in other words, Instead of grading 0 to 100, what if we just graded 1 to 5? This prep is a 1 if it's terrible, it's a 5 if it's really good. If we just limit ourselves from 1 to 5, can then we agree on what is good and bad? And the answer is no, we can't. There's variability. What if we just said, okay, forget 1 to 5, pass, fail. Either this work here is acceptable or unacceptable, and I grade these 50 preps and this faculty member grades them as pass, fail. Can we agree? The answer is no. For almost half of all times, there was disagreement even between pass, fail among calibrated faculty. That's completely unacceptable. There's got to be a better way of doing this. What about if I were to grade something today and I 6 weeks later grade that same preparation? Would I give it the same grade? The answer is no, I wouldn't. Students know this and the literature knows this. 68% of students said they know there's faculty inconsistencies in the same faculty member. In other words, they might come to me with this prep and I say it's over tapered. They don't do anything to the prep. They could come to me 6 weeks later and I might say it's under tapered. And they know this. Research has shown this. This article was really well done, published in the Journal of Dentistry, and it looked at 75 amalgam preparations. And there's 5 examiners. And essentially, looking at pass-fail differences when the examiner evaluated the work one day and then 8 weeks later. And look at examiner number 4, okay? 16 of the 75 preparations, he switched from pass to fail, or fail to pass, the second time he graded. So within himself, he couldn't even agree 6 weeks later or 8 weeks later if it was pass-fail. That's how bad we are at grading. I mean, this is students' GPAs, it's going to be their livelihood. We need to provide accurate feedback. Can't be changing our mind whether it's pass-fail 1 week versus the next on the same exact preparation. And this was confirmed in a study done by Lilly. They reported a pass-fail difference among same raters, intra-rater reliability as 50%. 50% one time versus the other, they switched. Well, if we can't get it right, can we expect students to be able to look down at their preparation, the first time they've ever done it, and be able to tell themselves whether it's good or bad? Self-assessment. American Dental Education has a task force on objective assessment, and self-assessment is a big buzzword. They want to be able to have students look at their work accurately. But the answer is, with current technology, the way it's been done in the past, they can't. This was an excellent study published in JDE in November of 2010, and it looked at self-assessment. And the conclusion is pretty profound. A students look at their work and underestimate it. They say, oh, I could have did this better, I could have did that better. It's not very good, even though they're A students. While as D and F students look at their work and say, this is awesome. This here is going to be 100. So the very students who need to be able to be more critical of their work have a false sense of security, false confidence in their abilities. That's really something to consider when we talk about E4D compare and modern way of evaluating a student work. So the take-home message here among all this literature is, if we are going to truly achieve accurate feedback, we need to remove the human element from the evaluation process and develop objective evaluation methods. And this is where it's going to be incredible. We're going to get rid of the old grade sheet. We're going to just get rid of them. They don't provide accurate assessment, and we know that students aren't responding to them. We're going to use existing technology found in E4D, which I don't know how much y'all know on E4D technology, but essentially E4D technology is a way to scan preparations in the mouth and develop a high-quality digital model to which then you could therefore mill out nice restorations such as lithium disilicate restorations in the same visit and deliver those for your patients. So it's completely integrated chairside CAD/CAM technology. What if we could use that technology to evaluate preparation? At the Medical University of South Carolina, we have roughly 8 or 9 E4D systems, and we've been using it both preclinically to teach fixed prosthodontics 3 to make restorations, and we also use it clinically, and we've had it for right around 4 years now. And we've been doing thousands of same-day, high-quality ceramic restorations in the clinics with it, with the students, such as this case here, or these cases. The cases that we used to dread, the single unit anterior, now is just routine to be able to do with the students. They could custom characterize the restorations. They know all about the ceramic properties. Super well, clinically acceptable, nice fitting restorations because they're taught how to do the preps. In the pre-clinics, I don't have to sit there and look at their preps and tell them they're doing it wrong for CAD/CAM because they know how to do it. And we get results such as this. Take this case, for example. This is done in the student clinic, a nice onlay. Speaking of onlays, we're bringing back onlays to dental education. We do a lot of inlays and onlays, whereas before CAD/CAM, everything was a crown. You could be more conservative in your dentistry. So we're using the intraoral digitizer to scan in this quadrant. And essentially what it's doing is it's taking images as the operator's hand is steady. And you can see you're rolling the camera around to try to encompass the entire preparation and get it from every angle. And it's fairly rapid. It's quicker than taking a polyvinyl silk stain impression. It's quicker than a polyether impression. And especially what I really like about digital imaging is that you could stop, reestablish isolation, and pick up where you left off. Whereas a physical impression, you have to wait the 5 minutes and then start over. Here we go, we're marking the margin. And what I want you to focus on here is that the student is really looking at their preparation at this point. They're looking at their smoothness of their finish line. And what's remarkable is the comments you hear back from students after blowing the preparation up on the screen 500 times mag. They're saying to themselves, did I really lip that margin there? Did I really create that ripple with my handpiece? And the answer is yes. And so they take that feedback because it wasn't given to them by a faculty member. Had I walked in there and said, your margin's lipped, they would have said, you don't know what you're talking about, or no, it's not. But when they blow it up on the screen, they say, oh man, did I really do that? And they take a good look at themselves and what they could do to improve. So what if we could use this same technology, this digitization of preparations, the same technique, and translate it into preclinical work? And so we collaborated with D4D Technologies and many other schools across the nation to come up with software that could do that. But before we go into that, just look at this real quick, this autogenesis proposal for this onlay. It's just very little time spent messing around with software, and you could be able to deliver nice, high-quality restorations in single visits, like all of our CAD/CAM's done at the school in single visits. And it provides a whole new niche for our patients, and they love it. And here's this case before, and we did a Lava Ultimate nanoceramic resin reinforced restoration there. So we've done a couple thousand restorations. We keep records on it though. So what's unique is every time a student does a restoration, we have to follow up on it. And out of all the restorations that we've done, we've only had 4 failures. We mostly exclusively use EMAX, lithium disilicate, and we've had this system for around 4 years now. So we've been able to follow these restorations pretty long term. And the 4 failures, 2 of them were endo, 1 was a debond, and 1 of them was a fracture. And so that's a pretty good success rate. And so we've been very happy. But how do we take this to the clinics? Just look at this technology here. We digitized a model here of a student preparation. And immediately you could see that there's some benefits you could gain from digital technology and evaluating preparations that you can't really appreciate from just looking at a model. A little bit better clarity and the ability to zoom into the work really helps. It's like looking at your prep under a microscope. What if, though, we could take a student preparation as seen in the gray model and directly compare it to a faculty gold standard as indicated with the gold model that you see, and look at them at the same time? That in and of itself is pretty remarkable because we know that gold standard evaluation helps with rater calibration. And so if we could look at these 2 models that are distinct and compare them, we could better understand where the student erred. And E4D Compare does more than that though. not only are you able to look at the models distinctly and separate, you're able to combine them. And when you combine them, it automatically prints up for you a three-dimensional Doppler-type radar of your preparation errors. And what you're seeing here is where the student preparation differed from the faculty preparation. And blue is being under-reduced, red would be over-reduced, and green is that you're close. And what constitutes close is whatever you type into that tolerance gauge right there. And for our class, we use 300 microns. In other words, if a student preparation is within 300 microns of the faculty, they get credit for that as being good. It shows up green. If it's any further off than that 300 microns, they get dinged. They get points taken off. And it also shows up on the three-dimensional difference map. And so for this particular preparation, the student received a 74.3 for their reduction grade, because 74% of their preparation was within the set tolerable range of ideal of the faculty preparation, the 300 micron tolerance. There's so much more you could do than just a difference map with CAD/CAM technology, though, with E4D Compare. You could cross-section your digital model and look at it in ways that you never before could. You could look at not only a cross-section, but you could then superimpose the faculty preparation right on top of your cross-section and measure differences. We'll get into that in a live demo in a minute here. This is one of my favorite cases. This student worked on this preparation for 3 hours. And no matter how many times he came and asked me how he was doing, and every time I told him there was things that he needed to fix, he would go back and he just wouldn't fix them. He wouldn't know where to fix them. We scanned it with Compare, and it was right around a 50 for that evaluation, and deservedly so. That's a pretty poor preparation. But what the student said to me afterwards is, now I know what I need to fix. And he went from scanning this in with a 50 all the way up to a 90. It's a huge difference. See, once you could relay to a student accurately what's wrong, they could take that to heart and go to they have something to achieve, something to strive for, something they know is accurate, not arbitrary. And this is all it took for this student to become an excellent prepper. He just needed a different way to communicate those errors to him. So his first preparation, not that good. We'll show you his second preparation in the demo. And so we evaluated over 500 preparations at MUSC in Fixed Pros 3, which is the course that I direct, using E4D Compare as the sole mechanism of grading. And what we found is if you compare the averages on the first practical to the old way of grading, the glance and grade technique, the E4D was more accurate, but also more strict. Like I said, grade inflation and inaccuracy in grading is not doing anybody a favor. But with E4D Compare, the first practical average was 67. Think about that for a moment. These kids are used to getting nothing but A's. And what we found was that students were coming to my door and they were, instead of arguing like you would think, they were saying, how can I do better? If I had given a 67 practical average, the old technique, I would have just received nothing but emails saying I was wrong, I was grading them unfairly, and I was inaccurate. When the E4D Compare gives them a 67.94 practical average, the grade is not perceived as being arbitrary. Instead, they look at it and say, I need to practice. And they did practice. They were coming in on the weekends. I've never seen so much usage out of the simulation lab. We had to order more diamonds than we ever had before. We were doing special orders for Typodont teeth. They were going through so many. It's exactly what you want to see. You want to see practice to make perfection. And because they felt that they had now an accurate way to receive feedback, they were practicing. And so the second class average went higher, and I'll show you what that was in a second. And you would expect some improvement. But they understood, though, the very first day of class, I told them, some of you will fail. They're not used to that, but I told them worse situations exist. It's not the end of the world. So examples of the work on this first practical. This was from the beta version of the software before it went into a live product. So the screenshots look a little different. But this is actual student cases that you could see the circle there highlighting the green surface area representing their actual reduction grade. Student work is compared directly to the faculty. Second lab grade, class average jumped all the way up to a 90. They worked so hard and achieved so much that I would be proud to say that I would let any one of them do a preparation in my mouth. Whereas several years past, there's no way I would say that. Practice does make perfect, and because they could get self-assessment, they practiced. Rapid improvement. Let's just show you this one student here, how much they improved. Their whole lingual was under-reduced, but they couldn't see it. They spent many hours on this preparation. Their first grade was a failure. New tooth, different week, they got 100. They essentially replicated the exact preparation that the faculty did, and that's the ultimate goal. We also use it in morphology. Just in the past 3 weeks, we've graded over 675 student wax-ups. And so it's perfect for morphology when you think about it, because you're ultimately trying to get them to put on tooth. All you do is scan in the student wax-up, like you see here, number 8, and you could tell that it's bulky on the facial. The student couldn't tell that after staring at it for many times. And the point is that you scan the type it on tooth, you scan the student wax-up, and you get instant feedback. And what you could see here is that the compare is going to tell you exactly what we already know. The facial was bulky. But the student needed to be able to receive that information in a visual, three-dimensional way, a non-threatening way, where they could then go back and improve their preparation. And the same student afterwards scanned 100. They fixed their errors. So essentially what it's doing is taking a student wax-up and the unprepped type it on tooth and stitching those models together and then showing you where they're different based on whatever parameter of difference you want to set in. You could be as strict as you want or as lenient as you want. Then you could do multiple different things like cross-section that wax-up and then literally measure the distance where it's different from the unprepped type it on tooth. So before we started implementing this into our actual curriculum, we wanted to do some research. How is this working? Is it really accurate? And so we took 3 calibrated faculty members and who were active in the course and had them evaluate versus the E4D machine, the E4D compare. And what we found was, even after intense calibration, is that 38% of the variability in student grades was due to which faculty graded their preparation when they used the old-fashioned way of grading. So once again, we're showing exactly what the literature showed that we already went over. That 38% of a student's grade could potentially be due to just which one of us 3 graded them. That's just unacceptable. When graded with compare, there's only 3% variability in the grades. So what that basically said is that no matter who uses the system, it's precise and consistent and objective. And that's exactly what we're trying to achieve, objective feedback. What did the students say? What is the feedback from the actual students? You know, the research is good, but what do students feel about it? And we did a lot of study on this too, and we surveyed the students and got all the proper IRB approval and asked them the appropriate questions. And what about this comment? E4D compare grading of my preparations helped me to be a better clinician. So this class here has been in the clinics for 6 months now, and they're able to see the fruits of their labor from compare. They've had it in the pre-clinics and now they're in the clinics. Remarkably, over 85, roughly around 87% of the students said that E4D compare evaluation of their preclinical work has helped them to be a better clinician. That's profound, because that's the ultimate goal of assessment. The end goal is to make a better student clinician, which then is going to be a better clinician out in the state. And basically the students saying they agree with that. And so we did this survey and we received back a lot of comments. Just take a look at these comments because they speak for themselves. One student said, "I think it is extremely beneficial software. I truly believe it improves clinical abilities and almost more importantly, judgment, okay? Self-assessment. It's improved that student's judgment. Here it says, another student said, it forced me to pay more attention to detail. Like never before are students looking out on the micron level of their preparations. They're not just doing a rough prep and saying, oh, that's clinically acceptable. Another one, it forced me to practice and to get my hand skills down. It makes students want to practice because they know they're going to be graded strictly and fairly. Different students said it's by far the best learning hands-on tool. It made me become a perfectionist with my preps. That's what I strive for. I want them to be perfectionists. And lastly, E4D Compare made me be a better clinician by forcing me to focus on perfecting my preparations. So this whole concept of forcing and perfecting, Compare compels students to want to practice and to be perfectionists of their preparations. It's creating a different dynamic of ability to see where you're wrong and therefore have the proper knowledge to better yourself. And that's exactly what E4D Compare has been doing at MUSC.